Hello internets, this is BoneCarlos coming to you live from Shakura's Plateau to bring another StarCraft 2 commentary. Good luck, have fun, says ShadowSlayer. And speaking of good luck and having fun, we're going to go ahead and introduce players. Spawning as the blue Protoss is ShadowSlayer, and I would say 10 o'clock position. In the 2 o'clock position we have DrLector spawning as the red Terran. So we're going to be obviously seeing a PVT checking around the other spawning points, and we definitely don't see a Zerg or another Protoss, so it is a 1v1. ShadowSlayer wants to make sure that you're going to have a good luck, have fun game, and it looks like DrLector says no. He says no. Oh, he finally did. He's not the actual DrLector, because if he was the actual DrLector, he probably would have done something like eat somebody's brain. But beyond that, let's go ahead and take a look at Shakura's Plateau. You have a natural expansion that's fairly easy to take with I would say a double wide entry ramp into the natural expansion, and it looks like ShadowSlayer is actually scouting in the right direction. And a little tip for you guys: if you're scouting about, just go ahead and rally him here, and then go ahead and go here. It just opens up that little view and and you could actually spot if there's any kind of shenanigans going on or anything like that. And ShadowSlayer does scout in the right direction and manages just to catch that SCV working on building those barracks. But as usual, Dr. pulls off an extra SCV and starts chasing that probe away. I actually like to keep harassing this single SCV as long as possible, getting 2 or 3 hits in and then moving away to recharge those shields and getting in a couple of more hits and just whittling away over time to just hopefully maybe sometimes being able to bring down that SCV and just delay production of that barracks for as long as possible. And as you can see, we see a little ShadowSlayer just returning back, just making sure nothing crazy is going on. And in his base, we're actually seeing a double assimilator, so high-tech play coming from ShadowSlayer. More than likely not going to see mass sentries. That's more of a PvZ kind of build. So maybe we're maybe going to see a lot of air, since this is a quick spawning distance for air, or maybe some kind of Templar play from ShadowSlayer. But right now, the usual going down as of a cybernetic core is going down, so pretty much usual on that. We have 3 probes each on those assimilators, so I'm interested to see what he builds. More than likely going to be some sort of Templar play. And as you can see, we see a single Marine coming out and a second one coming in on the way. And what's very dangerous about Terran at the moment is that 1-1-1 build. It's hit and miss, and for me, and when Terrans do it against me, it's hit and miss. It all just depends on whether I manage my battles correctly and able not so much microing, but manage where the battles and engagements are held, just out of that point defense drone that the Ravens put down. But against Terran, especially on close positioning maps like this and just close spawning points, I actually like to rush for that early Zealot Stalker and just harass as much as possible while getting down my quick expansion. So as you can see, a Twilight Council going down, so more than likely tech play is going to go, Templar play is going to go down, since getting a Twilight Council this early just doesn't really mean that there's going to be Blink Stalker coming in anytime soon, since there's only 1 gateway as of right now. And as you can see, it looks like 3 Marines are holding down the base, while DrLector is actually choosing to early expand and just now beginning to put down his refineries to be able to mine that gas. And as you can see, we actually see a Dark Shrine going down, so we're actually going to see some Dark Templar into play. Those cloaked assassins of the Protoss are always fun to play and use around with. But against Terran, it's going to be very interesting, since he already does have his Orbital Command. He has spotted this. I'm assuming he has spotted this. And he spotted the Twilight Council, so he more than likely knows that a Templar plate is going to go down. And if he's already morphing this into a second Orbital Command, so I'm going to go ahead and just assume that he's just going to go ahead and save up that energy for a quick emergency scan on both of these command centers. So 2 scans are pretty much going to negate any kind of Dark Templar play. And as we can see, we see 1, 2, 3 gateways. Perfect amount of gateways you want. I usually like to go DT quick DTs in when I go free for all and just like to cheese like crazy. And at about this time that this pop, you could really only support 3 gateways worth of producing DTs out of only 2 assimilators. So he does have the right amount of gateways, in my opinion and in my experience. Not that much minerals though. He might want to gear up and start. He actually put down a Nexus fairly quickly. So if he hadn't put that down, he would have been able to put down 3 Dark Templars, but he actually hasn't even finished Warp Gate, so he probably was using Chrono Boost on the Nexus instead to be able to chrono out those probes, and just now the Warp Gate is done. We're more than likely going to see a bunch of Dark Templar going to be put down here and just going to be rushed forward, but we actually already see a missile turret in place. Even if you just try to sneak by through here, these two Dark Templar are going to go down very quickly. And you see one goes down, and actually one does get by with actually 2 HP, but not much damage is going to be done. This orbital command is almost ready for a scan, as is this one. And the wall off is complete to his main, so he's going to do as much damage as possible to these mules, but once he gets that scan down, that HP is done. So DrLector did have the appropriate response on seeing that Twilight Council put down just an emergency missile turret at the front just to make sure nothing like that happened, and he pretty much did very well in defending. He only lost a single, it looks like he only lost a single SCV, while ShadowSlayer lost a lot of resources in those 2 Dark Templar that he lost. Because remember, Dark Templar are not cheap. They're 125, 125, so 250 minerals or 250 resources overall for a single Dark Templar. And as you can see, ShadowSlayer is getting a bit greedy right now, getting a 3rd natural or 3rd expansion, while his natural isn't even saturated in the slightest. I mean, he's actually putting down another Templar Archives, and right now this is a bit dangerous play by ShadowSlayer. I mean, yes, he's got Templars on the field. Psionic Storm isn't being researched as of yet, and he's not even close to having the appropriate amount of minerals or gas. So this is a very interesting play for ShadowSlayer. If DrLector actually pushed out right now, the game would be over, since all we have on the field of play is 1 Dark Templar and 2 High Templar for ShadowSlayer. Those High Templar without Psionic Storm, by the way, while DrLector has 21 Marines and a single Marauder. So one scan will make quick work of that single Dark Templar, and those 2 High Templar are really just there for show as of right now. I mean, Psionic Storm is about halfway done, but it's still got a long way to go before any kind of use is going to be put out of him. I mean, Psionic Storm is a great spell to have, especially up against Marines, since they are pretty vulnerable to it. But 2 up against that many Marines is just no dice. We do see them being transmerged into Archons at the moment, so interesting to see what he's planning to do with it, with those units as of right now. I mean, a single Archon and 2 High Templar and a single Dark Templar is a very interesting unit composition at about 10 minutes. No Zealots, no Stalkers, no Sentries. So ShadowSlayer said, you know what, forget it. I don't even need those tier 1 units. I'm going straight for tier 2. And in DrLector's base, we actually see a bunch of medevacs, actually a couple of medevacs already on the field of play, so more than likely, hopefully going to see a couple of drops. I mean, as you can see, there is nothing here to stop any kind of droppage going on. I mean, there's not enough units to be able to defend against the drop right now, and ShadowSlayer is just using this 3rd just for the purposes of mining gas. And right now he has plenty of gas, but not enough minerals to be able to support any kind of production, especially out of those gateways that he's actually that are actually being built right now. There's actually a couple of forges going down, so the upgrades are going to be commencing in just a moment as soon as they're done. But still, pure gateway units, not even a robotics facility going down as of yet. And you actually see a drop coming in from DrLector, and this is a pretty heavy force. If he just drops it here, he's going to do a substantial amount of damage to ShadowSlayer's economy as of right now. Right now, he only has 3 units lost. To see how many probes he can manage to pick up. 1, 2, 4 more, and it's up to 15, 16 units lost for ShadowSlayer. And right now, he just lost a lot of probes. He's going to lose a lot more units at the moment. He actually loses 2. He manages to lose both of those High Templar and just feedbacks both of the medevacs, but still, it's too much of a force. There was nothing those Archons could do. It feels too much DPS being done, and DrLector doing the sensible thing and just taking down that Templar Archon. He doesn't want any more High Templar being put on the field of play, especially since the feedback on the medevacs cost them greatly. I mean, it did almost kill them completely, but the main important thing is they don't have enough energy to be able to heal up the units that are almost dead as of right now. This Archon needs to be micro just a little bit forward, needs to be pushed forward just a little bit to be able to zap those enemies. But as you can see right now, 1 medevac goes down and he doesn't quite able to get that 2nd shot to bring down that 2nd medevac. So right now, those units lost fairly, in the unit slots tab, we actually see kind of a fairly even trade. I mean, he did lose, looks like about 20 or so probes, and let's go ahead and take a look at the income tab, and it actually does show that harvester count is even, but with the power of the mules, Terran player DrLector is up in that regard, and especially since ShadowSlayer is just putting his probes back onto his main, and as you can see, his third is still hasn't even, no probes that still are still on those mineral patches. So as you see, heavy saturation in the natural, you'd actually stand to transfer a couple more of those probes. And as you can see, we actually see just pure, we see Stalker, Archon, and High Templar, while a big force of DrLector is going down, a mass bio ball. So a couple of Psionic Storms will actually do a ton of damage to this force. So I'm interested to see exactly what the outcome of this is. So far, it's actually not been going back and forth, but it's actually very interesting unit competitions on both. And it looks like ShadowSlayer third has been spotted. DrLector sees it, says, "Why not a free base? I'm just going to go ahead and take it." While the single Dark Templar harasses the rear and already has 2-3 kills on it. And as you can see, DrLector starts to pull back a little bit, and so the Psionic Storm right in the middle of DrLector's army, and actually does a ton of damage to that Dark Templar, almost completely negating those shields. And as you can see, DrLector's army is pinned back, and he decides to lift off and go ahead and go into ShadowSlayer's army. And ShadowSlayer says, "You know what? I don't need an army. I got probes to do my fighting," and those probes are demolished. They don't have best fighting units in ShadowSlayer, and as you can see, Zealots are charging in. They finally do have charging, able to do a bit of damage, but up against this bio ball, and that micro of DrLector actually saves a bunch of Marines from damage and takes down that entire small squad of Zealots. And as you can see, those Archons were slow to get back into the fray, and they are actually into it, and you actually see that splash damage of the Archons is fairly effective, and this Archon looks like it is going to go down. It does go down. They do have 300 hits, but they only have 10 life. This High Templar is just hanging out, saying, "What up, Pete?" 49. Let's see if he is able to get a feedback off the time, and he does not. And finally, DrLector is pushed back, but not after ShadowSlayer gets a ton of damage. I mean, the units lost are about even, but the resources are almost double, and a lot of those units lost were probes. And again, the income is and again in DrLector's favor, we see the harvester count around the same for ShadowSlayer, even though he has been producing those probes non-stop since those 2 drops have been causing a ton of damage to him economically. And in that entire drop, we actually see DrLector taking his third, and he's still churning out and producing those units, while we see another Nexus being built at that same third by ShadowSlayer. Actually finally see a robotics bay was finally completed, and actually this is the first observer on the field for ShadowSlayer. And actually see the single Dark Templar going to go push forward and try to do as much damage as possible with those single shields, actually keeping those Marines from being killed in one shot by that Dark Templar. Scan goes down to pick off that single Dark Templar. By Dark Templar, you serve your purpose, so getting 9 kills is very admirable for any single unit. As you can see, Zealot is going to go ahead and just rally around the area, make sure there's no fourth being taken by DrLector. Very smart play actually by ShadowSlayer. Make sure there's no secret expansion. As I mentioned before, having a secret expansion by your opponent when you have no idea that it's gone down is just very aggravating on your part, very demoralizing as well. We're going to see another small force, and DrLector is actually pushing out with a very small force, sending out that damaged medevac over here just to scout to make sure there's no secret expansion by ShadowSlayer of himself. We actually see that Nexus is finally down, and Pylon's being placed down more than likely just as a buffer to make sure there's nothing crazy going on. And a single SCV decides to test his mettle in battle by attacking a warping. And Pylon, as you see, ShadowSlayer's force is actually pushing forward, and you see a perfect storm being put down, but not a single unit was pulled back, so all the units took a heavy brunt of that force. You see a single ghost try to do any kind of damage to the psionic energy of the High Templar, but no dice. I mean, a couple of ghosts would actually be perfect up against this army. 2 or 3 ghosts putting down those EMPs would actually negate the entire shields of these Archons, and they would just completely melt. Up against the bio ball that Drlector has. And it's taking a look at the EMP, it actually does 100 damage to shields and energy of all units. So 5 or 6 ghosts putting down about 2 or 3 EMPs would actually just completely slaughter this entire army and make their shields useless. And as you can see, there's a little bit back and forth. DrLector is just scanning to make sure exactly what's going on at the third, and it just looks like he's licking his chops, trying to take take that third, while another drop is actually going to go ahead and go around to his main. So we're likely going to see a double-pronged attack. One, this landmass isn't connected yet, so you're going to have to go back around. So we're actually going to go to see a double-pronged attack, one at the third, while ShadowSlayer is actually spotted this drop going down. But you know what? That's the brilliance of a two-pronged attack. If one doesn't work, the other one more than likely will. He still drops here just anyway, just because. But the third is taken down yet again by DrLector, and right now there's a huge surplus of minerals on both sides. We see a single cloaked ghost just hanging out, doing his thing, shooting down the assimilator. So with this huge influx of resources, I would actually like DrLector to just put down a third, a fourth, a fifth, a sixth command center. I mean, why not? You got SCVs just hanging around, not really doing much. It looks like there was a bit of a drop over here by ShadowSlayer, so very interesting to see. We see drops galore all over the place. So I am clearly missing some of the action that's going on. So this game is actually going back and forth, a little bit of a misclick over here. These Archons don't know exactly what they're doing. These two, the single Marine Admiral, are trying to take down this fort, but it's not going to happen anytime soon. We see another redrop by ShadowSlayer, warping in a couple of Dark Templar, but being cancelled. The War Prism gets destroyed. He does regain all those wasted minerals, but it's still kind of sad when they don't finish in warping in. And this ghost is just hanging out, picking on. Yes, he's up to 23 probe kills. So 24 kills. Never say die as he dies. That's right, Ghost. So up to 24 pro kills for that single ghost. And as you can see, ShadowSlayer decides to retake that third expansion, while a single medevac is over here just making sure there's no fourth. And it looks like this single this fourth expansion by DrLector was actually canceled out by that single Zealot. So right now we actually see a Zealot Archon mix with a bunch of High Templars. So very interesting unit composition against a purely bio-balling Terran, and DrLector is trying to force a retreat under the might of these Archons. It looks like they're going to make short work of this Oracle command. I should see these High Templar pushing forward. They're probably going to try to storm these SCVs as they go on their way out, but it looks like they're actually going to take care of the army. Instead, he keeps pushing forward, tries to get the perfect storms out. DrLector just keeps staying, pulling back, trying to get out of those storms as much as possible. We actually see another perfect storm land and does a ton of damage on that fireball. We actually see reinforcements by DrLector. The Archons are forced to pull back and attack the weakened army, and we see more Archons coming and streaming in, and it finally looks like ShadowSlayer's entire army has been whittled down by the fireball army of DrLector. So in the units lost tab, we actually see a lot of units lost for DrLector. But the resources have been evened up by ShadowSlayer, and as you can see, DrLector is putting down his third and a fourth, and while at the same time retaking that third. So technically that's his fifth by now, while ShadowSlayer is basically still only on 3 bases, but he does have a surplus of minerals, no gas though, while it's completely reversed on DrLector's side. So no worries, a couple of OP mules, we're going to go ahead and take care of that very, very quickly, while we see a bunch of, it's going to be a Zealon, High Templar, and a single Archon are going to be in the mix for ShadowSlayer, while actually the upgrades are actually 3-3 in armor and weapons, while nothing for the shields. So very interested to see why he hasn't chosen to do those shield upgrades, especially since he used Archons so heavily in the mid game. I actually see we see DrLector just pushing around, and that command went down very quickly. We actually see a missed EMP, a second missed EMP by that ghost. He doesn't have enough for another shot, so very wasted. Some feedbacks on those medevacs, and a ton of storms being put down and being accomplished. And wow, all those medevacs are completely done. These Zealots are going to rip into this fireball without any kind of support. It's going to come down to the micro of DrLector. He's trying to stutter step as much as possible, but he's hitting that HP a little bit too fast. He's doing quite a bit of damage, and those Zealots are forced to pull back. And we can actually see him just keep scanning, looking around to see if there's anything he's missing. As we can see, another little squad of a unit of the same High Templar Zealot Archon mix that ShadowSlayer has been using this entire game has been warped in, and it looks like his first army that was actually decimated is going to go join back and regroup with that newly warped in army. But DrLector says, you know what, I'm not going to sit here and wait. I'm just going to push forward and destroy your third. And hope you like it. he says, because I'm going to go ahead and do it. Push forward, and then he looks like he's gonna go ahead and engage, but he actually pulls back half of his army. He's trying to bait a Psionic Storm and a miss, but he actually gets those Psionic Storms are actually decimating the entire army of DrLector. This army has nowhere to go. Storms are being put in. Chargers are coming in to try to finish them off, and that Archon is doing its damage. And there it is. There is no more force by DrLector. He's still very completely broke with a bunch of orbital commands. Those mules are coming down and doing their best to be able to mine those minerals. And it looks like the main and the natural are pretty much completely mined out. So it's only 2 mining minerals or 2 mining bases for DrLector, while ShadowSlayer has pretty much his long distance mining from his third. So really it's down to about a half a mining base to about 2. So very interesting to see what this game turns into be. Right now it looks like there's a lull in the action. Both players are just kind of recouping their losses, trying to re-macro up and just get those bases, their bases up and running, make sure that all their probes and workers are doing as much as possible. And we actually see, wow, a ton of minerals by ShadowSlayer, so we're more than likely going to see a ton of Zealots going to be warped in. Scans just being put down by DrLector to make sure there's nothing crazy going on, while ShadowSlayer decides to finally take his 4th. And this single middleback is still just scouting around, making sure that there's no 4th, 5th, or 6th being put down. But as of right now, you actually saw ShadowSlayer just barely taking 4th of his excess minerals. I actually see ShadowSlayer deciding to put down an entire new base at the 5th. So we actually, and we see ShadowSlayer pushing forward, trying to take out the last remaining mining bases of DrLector. And it looks like there isn't enough forces here to be able to stop this, obviously. And it's caught way out of position. All of his forces are back at home at his natural. This orbital command is going to go down fairly quickly. All of these Zealots are going to just make mincemeat out of these SCVs. It is all over. And as soon as he pushes up here, it's going to be all over for DrLector, because at this point he has no mining bases left. He's actually trying to pull these SCVs back to hide them, but with this missile turret right here to give him a giveaway, I'm sure the ShadowSlayer is going to be able to find out. But as we can actually see, a medevac drop by DrLector is going to push right into the main base of ShadowSlayer, and just it looks like he wants to go into a base race kind of situation, but ShadowSlayer is having none of that. He's pulling back all his forces to cover his home base, while at the same time warping in Zealots and a single Archon, or a single High Templar. This has enough for a single Storm, and as he pushes forward to see if he makes that Psionic Storm worth it, and it looks like he has a clean shot, but he does not take the shot. He hesitates just a little bit, and that High Templar melts right away to this Bioball army of DrLector. The reinforcement army is in from ShadowSlayer, and these Chargers are doing their damage, but it looks like DrLector is just going to go ahead and ring around the rosy, deciding to get himself a nice little shield, and oh, those High Templar finally show into the game and put down a perfect storm, taking care of the rest of DrLector's army. This medevac goes down, and in the units we have, we actually see 4 medevacs, 12 Marauders, and 28 Marines, but they're all at home base, and there is actually no mining being done by DrLector. I mean, gas is being mined, but there is no minerals being mined whatsoever. These SCVs are actually going in the wrong direction. This command center has finally landed. Well, we see ShadowSlayer, and look, this is a Stalker has been built. The first Stalker has been built by ShadowSlayer at exactly 32 minutes into the game, but that doesn't matter. There's a huge battle going on, and Psionic Storms are doing a ton of damage yet again against DrLector's mostly Bioball army, and DrLector just doesn't learn. He doesn't want to build siege tank. Forget siege tanks. I'm just going to keep getting stormed. That's what he says, and finally the first EMP actually does go down in a perfect spot, and as you can see, it kind of drained completely those 8 High Templars. DrLector Protoss is so imba. God or good. ShadowSlayer LOLs. DrLector, I kill all to you. Fool. DrLector, if you see a bunch of High Templars and Archons, don't go mass bio. Siege tanks, more ghosts perhaps. Stuff of that nature. Don't just complain because you lost. And it actually looks like he's just buying time, because he's just trying to get as much minerals as possible from these mules. And with this base up and running, for ShadowSlayer, and his third up and running, it looks like there's 3 mining bases to about 1 mining base. So and with the surplus of minerals that ShadowSlayer has, this is probably going to be a no-win situation for DrLector. Yeah, he's actually trying to push forward, trying to take care of, just trying to hang on as much as possible. But this force is nothing, especially being sandwiched in between these 2 forces of ShadowSlayer. Zealot Archon is great up against Bioball, apparently. DrLector just went for Zumba. And ShadowSlayer is just chasing around this medevac. DrLector is just being annoying, trying to keep him away from this last mining base. But ShadowSlayer is not fooled. He's going to push forward to his original intention to destroy the last remaining mining base of DrLector. And it looks like he's going to do it. It's going to go down. This base has no defenses. There's no chance for it. He's going to mop up at these SCVs. This Archon is going to do this damage. Pretty good feedback all over. These are all the I don't know, I would just for the hell of it try to feedback it, try to give it a feedback. And as you can see, no mining is being done. I mean, there is a couple, it looks like there's a couple of harvesters over here on this refinery, but other than that, that's it. Fuck you, man. Fuck you, DrLector. And it looks like DrLector is going to leave the game anytime soon. No, he's going to hang around. And let's go ahead and wrap this game up because it looks like this game is pretty much over. And the units last time we see 402 for DrLector, while only 186 for ShadowSlayer. But actually, the resources were about, I would say about average, about even, I would say. DrLector did lose 10,000 more resources than ShadowSlayer, but you know, it goes to show the just the high-powered units of the Protoss and how expensive they are compared to most other ones. How are you on upgrades? 3 armor, 3 armor. So there you go. So ShadowSlayer is just trying to, I don't know if he's trying to poke fun at DrLector, but no, you can see it clicking on my damn units. And it looks like this little final little engagement. These hair templates are going to go ahead and push forward. They're not really going to go ahead and Sonic Spam. They're just going to go ahead and distract. And as you can see, a little bit of a misclick by DrLector shooting his own command center a couple of times. He's picking up his units, going for the high ground, but it's GG, game over. That's it. I hope you guys enjoyed. If not, leave a comment down below on what I can do to make it more enjoyable for you. If there's a specific replay you guys can do of your own, leave a comment down below with a link to it to one of the more major replay sites. And yeah, that's it. Other than that, I'm just going to go ahead and get on out of here because this is pretty much it. And yeah, I'm going to go ahead and get some sleep because I'm pretty tired. I'm going to leave the game later, guys.